Welcome, and thank you for attending today's session. I am Stephen Ellenson, the worldwide head of the restaurant, catering, food service distribution, and restaurant technology industries here at Amazon Web Services. I'm honored today to be joined by Richard Haigh, the Chief Technology Officer from Just Eat Takeaway, who you will hear from very shortly. I personally invited Richard to come speak with us today because he's uniquely positioned to share his experience and his insights. Richard joined Just Eat Takeaway nearly 4 years ago and has quickly risen through the ranks based on his exceptional leadership and engineering capabilities. The platform that Richard and his team have created supports more than 34 subsidiaries, operating in over 24 countries, and in direct support of more than 200,000 restaurants each and every day. To say that this platform has experienced exponential growth and scale as a result of the last few months would be a tremendous understatement. In addition, recently, Just Eat Takeaway announced plans to acquire Grubhub. This has received board approval and will likely be completed in early 2021. Now, I shared earlier that I'm part of a dedicated team focusing on travel and hospitality customers here at AWS. The needs of these travel and hospitality customers are unique, and myself and my peers are proud to be able to stand by their side during these challenging times. We've witnessed as travel and hospitality organizations have pivoted to begin to use technology to enhance their customer experiences and improve their operational efficiencies. Ultimately, they tell us that they're looking to build resiliency for the long run. These travel and hospitality brands are some of the most well-known and loved organizations on the planet. Think about yourself and how much you long for the opportunity to continue to engage with them in the near future. Through the depth and breadth of our experience and working with all of these customers, we have observed some common patterns and trends. It is for these reasons that we're certain that Richard's insights that will be shared with you today will be applicable to companies around the world. We've watched as travel and hospitality companies have gone through 3 phases. First was business impact, then was movement towards business continuity, and ultimately a movement towards building resiliency for the long run. We've been inspired by the innovation that's been created from travel and hospitality companies during these times. In addition to today's learning opportunity, there are 2 others I would like to invite you to. First, Jeffrey Goh, the Chief Executive Officer of the Star Alliance, will share his insights from running the largest travel and airline organization. Then, Scott Strickland, the Executive Vice President and Chief Information Officer from Wyndham, will share his insights from the accommodation and lodging industry. And of course, 24/7, you can log on to aws.com/hospitality. There, you'll be able to download our 60-page ebook on building resiliency for the long run. You can view timely blogs, and of course, you can always access reference architecture, customer stories, white papers, and use cases. Now, no conversation could occur without talking about the unprecedented times that we've been through. I'm certainly fortunate to have spent the last 30 years of my career in the restaurant and operations industry. I've known firsthand the resiliency, tenacity, and grit of restaurateurs and operators. But it's only through these last few months that others in the world have come to know this as well. When local retailers ran out of essential products like toilet paper, paper towels, rice, and flours, it was the restaurateurs who pivoted and changed their entire operations, becoming local pantries and marketplaces, supplying those much needed essential items to their local communities. Restaurants are also known for having a large number of fixed assets. You think about the real estate and the equipment that they invest in. They personally utilize these equipment and assets in order to become community kitchens, providing much needed meals to medical and frontline workers who are trying to provide safety in their local communities. And of course, the disruption cannot go on without talking about table service. It is our colleagues in the table service industries who were forced to close their dining rooms. They pivoted to delivery as a means to continue to stay engaged with their consumers and to provide much needed nourishment into the local communities. It is these brands and the third-party delivery marketplaces that rely upon AWS. They leverage AWS's agility, flexibility, elasticity, global reach, and innovation that allowed them to stay out in operations. Some of the inspirations that we've seen and technologies that we've seen deployed over the years were positive, will continue to influence how food is served into the foreseeable future. Speaking of delivery and innovation and the impact on the foreseeable future, now would be a great time for me to introduce Richard Haigh, the Chief Technology Officer from Just Eat Takeaway.
Thank you, Stephen. It's great to be here virtually speaking to reInvent this year from a somewhat grey United Kingdom. My name is Richard Haigh. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of the Just Eat if you're in Europe, Menulog if you're listening from Australia, and Skip the Dishes if you're from Canada brands, part of the wider Just Eat Takeaway group. As Stephen said, I've been with the business around 4 years and worked on everything from core product development to the underlying tooling and infrastructure. But today I'm going to talk to you about how Just Eat Takeaway is building resilience for the long run and how AWS has played a critical part in that strategy. First, let me introduce Just Eat Takeaway for those that don't know us. I come from the Just Eat side, and that company was formed in 2001 in Denmark before moving to London to ultimately IPO in 2014. Just Eat Takeaway, or JET as we call it, formed from a merger of Just Eat and Takeaway earlier this year, and it brought together two multi-billion-dollar organizations to create one of the largest in its sector outside of China. Ultimately, our platform connects restaurants to hungry customers looking for a tasty takeaway meal. Initially, this model purely supported self-delivery, where the restaurants arrange their own delivery, but over the past few years, we've been adding more and more of our own logistics as an offering, noticeably with the acquisition of Skip the Dishes in 2016 and Takeaway's launch of Scuba around the same time frame. As a combined group, we are now home to over 200,000 restaurants worldwide, 54 million unique customers, and we take over just around $1 billion in revenues each year. What's more impressive, though, is the growth, and we're still growing well into double-digit territory when we look year on year. A great place to be, but also a very challenging place to support technically. So why did we choose AWS? Well, predominantly in order to support this rapid and continuing growth, Just Eat chose to move to the public cloud fairly early in its corporate life. The scalability, the elasticity of that infrastructure was considered key to support the ever-growing platform and the customer base it served. And today we continue to operate predominantly on AWS as a result of this continued flexibility. To give you an idea of the scale which we now operate, I've pulled some metrics from the Just Eat estate. So we operate at 99.95% availability. We peak at around 2,500 orders per minute, although that's probably already out of date, as every week is busier than the last. We pull around 120,000 metrics per second from our time series telemetry, and we log in excess of 5 terabytes of data from our event-based telemetry. And at peak, we operate something like 2,500 instances during those peak hours. So to do this on-prem, it's certainly possible. I've run big data centers before, but the effort to continue to scale at that rate and adapt to the weekly needs of the platform would just be hampered by the focus of maintaining our own hardware estate. So for that reasons, we still predominantly operate on AWS in that cloud. So how do we continue to build that resilience at scale, and how does AWS help us? So this list isn't exhaustive, but it certainly covers some of the more important areas. So first, again, it's the scale and growth. To scale and grow in a way that we would just find difficult to support through our own data centers. The sheer amount of equipment we would have to rack, stack, maintain, take apart again, replace, would be a department within itself that would just distract us from the work we do on our product development. Secondly, that scalability, that extensibility, assists us in matching our infrastructure consumption to a predicted traffic pattern. Now, Just Eat's traffic is actually quite predictable, be that the hour of the day, be that the day of the week, be that even the week of the month or specific holidays. We can pretty much predict where we think we're going to, what level of traffic we think we're going to get. And with AWS, it means we can preemptively scale our services to match that traffic flow, obviously with some headroom. The off-the-shelf services are also useful. It takes away some of those headaches by providing out-of-the-box solutions that we can just consume and develop alongside. Be that load balancers, be that data stores, that service offering is wide and allows us to very quickly take the latest and greatest and use it. And then lastly, to help us build that resilience for scale is a world-class support team that helps us train, that helps us operate, and it helps us respond in the moment. We interact almost daily with our AWS technical accounts team. So to put this into context, I'd like to talk about a couple of examples. The first one I'd like to talk about was quite recently, and this was an opportunity for us to help some of our key workers. So as COVID-19 hit the UK earlier this year and cases started to spiral, no one was more stretched than our National Health Service. We had retired doctors coming back to work. We had military service people called in to support. We even had volunteers from the public coming to join at a level we'd never seen before. Many of those volunteers themselves either out of a job or on furlough as their businesses hibernated. It was a huge, huge effort. And the teams at Just Eat decided that we wanted to do something to join the hundreds of other businesses trying to offer support for these critical workers during this time. But we needed to do it quickly, and it had to be robust, and due to the nature of our scale, it had to operate at scale. So the idea part was easy. We would offer a 25% discount to those key workers. But how would we identify who they were? How would we get them a voucher? How would we make it work quickly alongside the current platform? This was the more tricky part. We set ourselves a tight time target. We wanted to try and achieve this within a couple of weeks. At the time, we didn't know COVID was going to last as long as it did, so we wanted to get in as early as we could to help those key workers as soon as we could. If we spent too long developing something, we were worried we would simply miss the chance to help them. It also had to scale, and scale pretty hard. We reckon we would get in excess of 100,000 users immediately, and it had to be able to take that level of scale and work. And by work, we mean it had to be robust. We wanted to be able to confidently wrap this with marketing and with press to help us raise awareness for those key workers. The worst outcome we could possibly envisage was a promise of a thank you, but our inability to be able to deliver it for technical reasons. So it was a tall challenge indeed, but with the hard work from a small number of engineers, we managed to build just this. And I have to give a shout out to Zach Giles and Lewis Levents, who were at the very heart of making this work. Well done, guys. It was very much appreciated. But let me talk you through the architecture. Here's how it looked from a high level. So let's start with the authentication component. How do we generate a voucher and authenticate a user in the first place? So we started by stitching together Amazon Cognito and some Lambdas, and we used that to manage this collection of users. Cognito handled that authentication for us and the issuing of tokens, which we would later use to call our APIs to issue the voucher. Lambda was then used to help us check whether the domain part of the registering user's email was one that was from an allowed list. Now, the NHS has got many, many subdomains within its emails, so we took that list and used that as our key for authentication. If the user was allowed, Lambda would then auto-confirm with Cognito, that user. That avoided us having to do a separate administrative process, and it would also generate a 6-digit code which would be sent by email to the user. And we hooked directly into the simple email service, SES from Amazon, to do that email send, allowing us to send on bulk these emails with a specific code generated to those users. So at this point, the user has a code in their email inbox, and now the time comes where they want to redeem it for a voucher to take 25% off their order. So for this, we use the API gateway configured with Cognito authentication, and that automatically parsed the token that the user had and validated it. Lambda was then invoked to check that against a store in Dynamo to see if the code had already been generated. So we generated a code for a user per 24 hours. So if the user had lost it or forgotten it, they could go through that registration process again. Rather than generate a new code, we would pull it from Dynamo as a cache and present with that same code again. We would then send the code to the user, who could then simply copy and paste it into the standard redemption flow as part of our normal ordering process. And that gave the user the discount on their food, which was great. But of course, we wanted to be able to report on this so that we could track the financials and make sure that we were providing the value to those key critical workers. So we fired up through CloudWatch an event which triggered every 24 hours another Lambda. It ran at midnight each day. This parsed the discount code generated during that day, and with a call through to our API, decided which of those had been redeemed and which hasn't. And then for those that were redeemed, we could calculate the saving that we'd passed on, and we could put that all into a spreadsheet to easily report back to our finance teams and back to our marketing teams. And there you have it, a real textbook example of how we took a considerable amount of off-the-shelf functionality and stitched it together with the power of things like Lambda and its ability to interact with our core components and our platform and pull this solution together. And doing so in a way that required very little customization, if any, of the core product side of our platforms, making it quick and easy to deploy and robust in its execution. So that was the plan. Well, how did it actually perform? Well, we made headlines and we delivered the results of our thank you to our keyline workers. It worked wonderfully. To give you some idea of numbers, we put forward savings of in excess of £3 million to those key workers, serving up over 2 million meals. And that 100,000 user estimation was a little low. We ended up serving 412,000 distinct users as part of this promotion. So it clearly scaled well, it was robust. In fact, our biggest issue was convincing the NHS spam filters that we were a legitimate email. And actually, we had great support from our AWS team in the moment, helping us tune our emails to make sure it came across as genuine. So let's look at a second example of how AWS helped us meet another COVID-related scaling challenge. So as you can imagine, as lockdown hit the UK, many restaurant businesses had their walk-in traffic, the day-to-day traffic, just dry up overnight. Many simply, unfortunately, shut shop to wait it out, but many decided for the first time to take the leap into providing their services online through Just Eat's marketplace. And as a result, we saw an unprecedented demand in our services, something like 3,000 additional new signups in the initial week or two of COVID. Now, alongside this, remember how I talked about our traffic being cyclical, predictable? Well, it wasn't, not in this case. We saw some very interesting changes for the first time in the behaviors and the patterns of how traffic hit us. So some examples, our evenings moved earlier and became broader. That load came quicker in the day and lasted longer. We found a serious rise in people wanting desserts that before had no intent to buy desserts. And our usually quiet weekdays became the new busy weekends. Monday became the new Sunday. It really messed with all of that preemptive scaling planning that we did. And finally, on top of that, this surge in demand from restaurants, this surge in demand from our customers, meant that we also had an unprecedented demand on our call centres, both in terms of signing up and supporting new restaurants, but also supporting our customers as just the number of those grew. And it's not over, it got even more stressful. We also started to have to shut down our call centres and move those staff to home and work out how we could continue to support them safely and securely working outside of their offices. It really was the perfect storm. So once again, of course, we turned to AWS to help scale our way out of these issues and to adopt some new novel ways of working to boot. Now, of course, we've all heard of AWS scaling to support increased demand on the core platforms, and this is something we clearly had to do to support that uptick in new restaurants and customers. We're used to the patterns of scaling, it just meant we had to turn the dial slightly further. A very easy solution on this time. However, we had some other challenges. We needed to scale our VPN solution to allow our staff access to our systems whilst they weren't in the office, and to allow to do that at a level we hadn't done before. So for this, we turned to the AWS marketplace, and we converted in a very short timescale our appliance-based VPN solution to virtual appliances. Now, we actually did that in under 48 hours, and we grew that from supporting around 250 concurrent to an excess of 2,500 concurrent users. We also employed Amazon Workspaces to give us a secure operations environment for our call center staff, allowing them to work from home without, importantly, compromising our approach to security and data privacy. An absolutely amazing feat, and done literally in 2 or 3 days thanks to the tools at our disposal and the hard work from some of our teams. A huge shout out to our networking teams, our identity and infrastructure teams, and our end user computing teams for pulling this off at such short notice and allowing us to respond in the early times of COVID so well. This all came together, allowing us not only to cope with the extra demand COVID generated, but also to actually go a step further and reach out to support many of those small mom and pop restaurants and encourage them to continue to operate during this hard time. We did that through the means of a support package that, because we were able to scale and support, we were able to push to those restaurants. And here we can see the success of that. We were able to confidently announce this support package, which materially dropped the cost of using our service at the very time our restaurant partners needed it most. Something we just wouldn't have been able to do so confidently if we were unable to scale and support our underlying technical infrastructure and our ability to support it and our customers and restaurants during this time. So I hope so far it's proved an interesting introduction to Just Eat Takeaway and the wins we've recently had in cooperation in partnership with AWS. But I thought it might be useful to round off some of this session with some lessons I've learned along the way with AWS as a key partner as part of our software development lifecycle. So I'll go through this roughly chronologically. When we look at design, I always reflect on buy versus build. And there's the usual debates of whether you can take something off the shelf or whether you need to go to the extent of building it yourself. Now, AWS can make this very easy. As you saw with my NHS example, there's real power to confidently being able to stitch together off-the-shelf services that are ready to consume and to do so at scale and be confident that they can scale. It's faster and it's cheaper than building it for yourself. If we look at into the act of development, as you're developing your solution, the very nature of public cloud infrastructure makes it easy to instantiate pre-production environments, to run your ideas, to see their capabilities without having to wait around to finally push to production. And it enables you to do it with pre-production environments that look and feel like production, so you get like-for-like behavior. This massively shortens that build, measure, learn feedback loop that is so key to being able to quickly develop new products and get them to market fast. If we look at testing, one of the hardest things I've had to achieve in my career is when you operate at scale is to be able to test at scale. So cloud infrastructure makes it possible for us to run those tests at a scale that would just be very difficult or very expensive, or both, to achieve with traditional infrastructure. At Just Eat, we run system-wide tests daily in excess of our production load to give us that confidence that we're ready for the upcoming weekends and we're ready with any changes that we put in, that we can continue to operate at that scale. And let's not forget play. It's not all hard work. And cloud infrastructure gives us the ability to quickly create and discard environments in a way that allows us to experiment and innovate alongside such activities as our hackathons, which we run fairly regularly. In fact, the ability to create wide-scale vouchering with a level of self-authentication was originally born from a hackathon before being productionized later to provide our own staff with discounts code. And it happened to be the springboard that helped us get that NHS example out to market so quickly. As we move towards the tail end of the software development lifecycle, I also see benefit in the following areas. In incident response, AWS training that we give our staff means our first-line support staff can respond and do many of the actions that we may usually require second and third line staff to complete, be that scale up, be that diagnosis, be that the running of complex runbooks in reaction to an issue. They also are able to use tools like X-Ray to be able to find for themselves and triage to make sure they call out the right teams to respond. And this generally cuts our time to react down to single-digit minutes. In terms of operations, we now have so many operational controls. One of the lessons I've learned is you can become too used to this, especially if you've had periods where you've been very stable. Your teams can forget how to enact this disaster recovery or the ability to recover from this issue. So we use the scalable side of cloud infrastructure to be able to dry run and test these with a weekly cadence. So we make sure that all of our staff are able to not only run the playbooks and use those tools, but they're confident in how to use them because they've used them only a matter of days ago if they need to use them in anger. And finally, let's not forget feedback in the more general terms, these feedback loops. This could be architecture reviews. It could be specific support for issues. It could be subject matter expert talks. It could be executive briefings at a higher level. We've treated AWS as a real partner to leverage their strengths to help us here. We even go so far as to include some of the technical account teams directly in incidents as they're playing out and in the post-mortems as we look to learn from those to become stronger and better tomorrow. So in order to wrap up, I was asked what I saw for the future of Just Eat Takeaway and for food delivery. Now, clearly, I continue to see continued trend in growth. Whilst COVID has put an exceptional uptick onto this, it won't recede once we're through COVID. In fact, I believe it's changed people's very attitudes to online ordering and how comfortable they are doing so. And I think this has occurred in many sectors and will continue to do so. I think we'll continue to see as such solid growth long after we get the virus under control. And I see extensible, scalable cloud services as a key to enabling us to continue to scale our technology with the needs of the business as it grows. In a competitive product-focused marketplace, our product must continue to evolve, react, and take advantage where it can of current trends and circumstance. The key to this is the continued evolution at pace and a quick time to market and the ability to test solutions as quickly as possible. Just like our NHS example, we must continue to be nimble and continue to operate at that pace. And finally, pertinent with Grubhub that has achieved shareholder approval recently, but I think the sector will continue to see further consolidation as it matures. We look forward to that merger with Grub next year as it enters us into the US, and I'm sure there'll be many, many more opportunities for us to leverage the support models offered by AWS as we integrate and design for a future of an even wider group. So in conclusion, I want to leave you with this. I was asked how public cloud, how AWS made Just Eat resilient in the long run. I pondered this and realized we could have achieved this without the cloud. We could have built the data centers. We could have formed our own suite of services to our own internal customers' needs. But I think this would have made it incredibly difficult and hard for us to react in the moment, to change our approach in an instant when required. The great benefit we've seen from cloud services is that when a new service comes along, it isn't me, it isn't us that needs to deprecate racks of hardware to take advantage of that change and do it so quickly. And because of that lack of impedance, that ability to react so fast, we do it more often, we change more often. That ability to react, to be used to reacting and to change and continue to be good at changing, I think is what's contributed and will continue to contribute to our resilience within the long run. So I hope you enjoyed my talk, virtual as it was. I hope it was useful. Please do visit our tech blog and our company site if you'd like to know more. Thank you very much.